Well, what is the state of the Dutch farmer protest movement? Something we've been covering at length. Just as a refresher, the Dutch farmers have been pushing back against government efforts to shut down farms and implement, in my opinion, nonsensical environmental standards. Farmers have stood up in protest, driving tractors into cities, making themselves heard. But is it working? Jim Ferguson is a former parliamentary candidate and a businessman and entrepreneur who has been outspoken on this issue. He joins us to talk about this. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Natalie.
Yes, first time guest, but someone that I've followed a lot because in my book, you have a reputation on Twitter for being a truth teller. And so I appreciate that you're speaking out about this. Can you tell me what you think the current state of these protests are? Did they work? Are they accomplishing anything? And why do you think they were there in the first place?
Well, I think they most definitely have worked, Natalie, because they have garnered so much international support now. When you see thousands of people coming out in tractors and other farm machinery to block roads, to protest, it's inevitable attention to it. But actually, they have had an indirect effect on the Dutch government as well, because Mark Rutte was the prime minister there, and his government has collapsed just literally within a week and a half ago. And it collapsed because it was a coalition government. And he, of course, being connected to the World Economic Forum, was attempting to bring in huge numbers of illegal immigration as well. And his coalition partners said, no, we can't have any more of this. And the government actually collapsed. But that was as a direct result of the farmers' protests standing up and drawing attention to what they were trying to do to them.
Now, one of the things about Mark Rutte's resignation that gave me pause was seeing him in Telegram videos with Zelensky at the NATO summit last week, which made me wonder, does this mean that the policies that drove him out of politics in the Netherlands might be coming to other NATO countries? Is that something that you worry about, or do you think that this might be buried once and for all?
Oh no, it's definitely on its way. It's coming to the United States of America. We've seen that with John Kirby, who's the special envoy for climate change to Joe Biden. We've seen that happening, starting to happen in Canada, and it's going to happen in the UK. They're not going to give up that easily until we effectively ensure that our governments are no longer run by World Economic Forum placemen. And unfortunately, Joe Biden, John Kerry are part of the World Economic Forum, as is Justin Trudeau in Canada, Richie Sunak and his cabinet here in the United Kingdom. And of course, we see the same in France with Emmanuel Macron and Mark Rutte, of course. So we need to ensure that we are putting a stop to that. And the only way we can do it, Natalie, is for farmers and communities, people who are patriotic about their own national sovereign states, standing up together and saying no more.
Now, can you flesh out this World Economic Forum control mechanism a little bit better? Because a lot of times people hear this and they think, that's not real, that's tenuous, we don't really know. But then we do see power grabs that disenfranchise things that we need to live off of, fuel, farming, all of those types of things. So maybe you can flesh that out a little bit more for anyone who's just like, oh, I'm not willing to go there yet.
Well, I think we all thought that the World Economic Forum were just a sort of a bit of a club in Davos where they used to meet for business people, industrialists, people that were quite wealthy, and they were just trying to get some solutions to the world's problems. But it's become much more apparent that there is something far more insidious going on. We've seen the chairman, German Klaus Schwab, who has openly bragged about having penetrated, that's his own words, penetrated the cabinets of most of the Western Hemisphere, and indeed some in the East. So he's not kidding. He's quite proud of the fact that he now has influence with his own people in positions of power and authority within respective governments. And one thing that we need to be aware of, Natalie, is these are globalists and they want a one world government that they control. So the independent national sovereign states are an obstacle to that. And one thing that we are seeing and watching very closely there is because they're using a tool to weaken individual countries through mass illegal immigration. Of course, that's what's led to the collapse of Mark Rutte's government in Holland.
Right. Now, the farmer citizen movement, though, was one of the things that helped to succeed at pushing back. But The European Union already approved a plan to buy out livestock farm and force these farmers to sign a promise not to start farms anywhere else. That's still happening, right? Despite protests. So that bit of it is going to implode. Is there anything you think that can be done about that?
Well, it's actually really quite serious, Natalie. I'm glad you brought that point up because what the European Union have now gone and said to these Dutch farmers is that if you resist the Rutte government, they said this prior to the collapse of his government, they said, if you resist us, we are going to stop you farming anywhere else in the European Union member states. Now, you have to remember, these people are farmers. That's all they know. That's all they've ever done. So that threat is a very real threat. It's
Right. It's not
completely
like they
undemocratic.
know how to go and farm in Africa then. It's regional.
Well, it's European wide, but I mean, it's a big threat to them. If they
Yeah.
dare to resist, Natalie, then they're going to get stopped from farming anywhere within the member states. So it's a very, very serious thing. And I think that what's happened with the Dutch government actually, though, might be the crack in the army that we need to see. If they're now seen to be getting pushed back, people, it will galvanize further support, and it's going to mean that people will regain their courage and their momentum. And I think we're starting to see evidence of that in Holland right now. I spoke to Mr. Roebels, who is the leader of the Farmers Defence Force in Holland. They have thousands of members. They're very organized. And what I would like to see, Natalie, happening is that ranchers in America, farmers in the UK, food producers, wherever they might be, start to join forces and start to resist this takeover, because ultimately our food supplies are what they're really after. The
Right.
World Economic Forum is all about control of people, whether it's through CBDCs or whether it's through the food. And if they control the food, then they control all of us.
Right. So this is something that we all can use as a cautionary tale and band together in ways that maybe are out of reach from politicians. Um, and so what you think is just pay attention to even the small movements where you live so it doesn't get this far. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think that there are three things to think about. We've got the strategic, the tactical, and the operational command, if you like. So the local people are the sort of the operational side of things. The tactical might be the more regional type of organizations that are going to be overseeing this, and the strategic are the truly international and global efforts to coalesce and get people together. And I'm talking to people internationally in Canada, the States, obviously the UK, Australia, and New Zealand now, to actually do that. So there is a big momentum that's building. And I think you're going to find that people are just at that point where they're going to fight back now and say, no more, we can't allow this to happen to our farms and our communities.
I guess what scares me is that when a movement like the farmer citizen movement gains power, we have come to expect that there'll be a more powerful mechanism that subverts it. And that's my fear. Do you share that fear? And who would it be, and
Yeah,
how do we make them stop?
I do share that concern, Natalie, because we have to understand who and what we're actually dealing with. These people, in my opinion, are megalomaniacs and really quite insane, and they will not easily give up on their grip on power. You have to remember, though, Natalie, that we are billions strong, and there's only a few thousand of them that control all the wealth and the property and the power at the moment. But I think if we can start to turn this around, and I think Holland is most definitely, from my point of view, the frontline battleground. We need to support them there. We need to draw attention to what's going on. But we also need to be prepared in our own respective countries to say, if you are a WEF affiliated politician, we simply will not vote for you, regardless of whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, Labour Party or Conservative here in the UK, or wherever you are. We've got to say, no, we want our politicians to serve our own countries, not a German chairman in the World Economic Forum.
Right. Well, thank you for bringing us your take on this, and for all the speaking out that you do about this. You can find Jim on Twitter at Jim Ferguson UK, and anywhere else you'd like to point us to follow along with your work.
Well, I'm very grateful to Elon Musk and Twitter, the rest of the channels. are usually very highly censored. But I would just pay tribute to Redacted because I watch your show all the time. It's
Oh,
fantastic what
thanks.
you and Clayton do, and thanks so much indeed for having me on. It's been a real pleasure to see you and to talk to
Yeah.
you.
Well, come back anytime.
Okay, Natalie, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.